The sun was setting over Highway 87, painting the Texas sky in shades of amber and rose, when Grace Sullivan's truck finally gave up the ghost. She'd been nursing it along for the last 50 miles, talking to it like an old friend, promising it just a little bit further. But here, on a dusty stretch of road where the horizon seemed to go on forever, the engine coughed once, twice, and died with a wheeze that sounded almost apologetic. Grace coasted to the shoulder and sat for a moment, hands on the wheel, staring at the empty road ahead. 43 years old, recently divorced, driving from Houston to her sister's place in Amarillo with everything she owned packed in the truck bed. This seemed about right for how her year had been going. She popped the hood and climbed out, wrench in hand. Growing up on her daddy's ranch, she'd learned to fix most things. Engines, fences, broken hearts. Well, 2 out of 3 wasn't bad. The heat rose from the asphalt in shimmering waves. In the distance, she could see a lone tree and what looked like a figure walking. As she bent over the engine, squinting at hoses and belts, she heard the crunch of boots on gravel. Looks like you could use a hand. Grace straightened and found herself face to face with a cowboy who seemed to have stepped right out of another era. He was maybe in his late 40s, wearing a gray hat that had seen better days, a blue denim shirt faded from sun and washing, and jeans that bore the honest dust of hard work. His face was weathered in that way that comes from years under the open sky, with eyes that were kind but carried a certain wariness, like a horse that's been spooked once too often. "Engine trouble," Grace said, wiping her hands on her jeans. "She's been threatening to quit on me for a while now. Guess she finally made good on the promise." The man smiled slightly, a slow warming that reached his eyes. "Mind if I take a look?" "Be my guest. I'm Grace, by the way." "Jack," he said, already moving to the engine with the easy confidence of someone who knew his way around machinery. "Jack Holloway." For the next 20 minutes, they worked in companionable silence, Grace handing him tools while Jack traced the problem with patient, capable hands. There was something soothing about it. The simple collaboration, the shared purpose. "Your radiator hose is shot," Jack finally said, straightening, "and you've got a cracked belt. I can patch it enough to get you to town, but you'll need proper repairs." "Town far from here?" "Redemption's about 15 miles up the road." He pulled a roll of tape from his back pocket and some spare wire. "Got a ranch a few miles that way." He gestured west, where the land rolled away in gentle swells. "I was heading home when I saw you pulled over." As he worked, Grace found herself studying him. There was something about the way he moved. Economical, unhurried, like a man who'd learned that most things worth doing couldn't be rushed. His hands were scarred and calloused, working man's hands. She noticed the worn places on his boots, the frayed edge of his collar. "You a ranch hand?" she asked. Jack glanced up, something flickering across his face too quick to read. "Something like that. I work with cattle, manage some land. Must be beautiful country to work in." "It is." He returned his attention to the hose. "When you take time to notice it. Most folks these days are too busy looking at screens to see what's right in front of them." Grace laughed. "You sound like my daddy. He used to say the world was getting too fast for its own good." "Smart man, your daddy." He was. Grace's voice softened. "Raised me and my sister on a ranch outside of Austin. Lost it 10 years ago when the bank came calling. That was hard on him. He died 6 months later. Broken heart, the doctor said. But I think it was more like a broken spirit." Jack looked at her then, really looked, and Grace saw understanding in his eyes. Not pity, but recognition. "I'm sorry. Losing land that's been in your family, that's not like losing property. It's like losing part of yourself." "Yes," Grace said simply. "Exactly that." Jack finished the temporary repair and wiped his hands on a rag he pulled from his pocket. "That should get you to Redemption. There's a good mechanic there, name of Pete. Tell him Jack sent you and he'll treat you fair." "How much do I owe you?" Grace reached for her wallet. Jack waved her off. "Nothing. Just passing on a kindness. Someone helped me once when I needed it. Paying it forward, that's all." Grace felt something warm settle in her chest. "At least let me buy you dinner. There must be some place in Redemption." Jack hesitated, and Grace saw something that looked like loneliness flicker across his face before he masked it. "Martha's Diner makes a good chicken fried steak." Then Martha's it is. They drove in convoy, Jack in an old pickup that had clearly seen decades of use, Grace following behind. The sun continued its descent, and Grace found herself thinking that this wasn't such a bad day after all. Redemption turned out to be one of those small Texas towns that seemed frozen in a gentler time. Main Street had a hardware store, a feed supply, a diner with checkered curtains, and not much else. Jack led her to Pete's garage, where a grizzled mechanic in oil-stained overalls listened to the truck's symptoms and nodded knowingly. "Need to keep her overnight," Pete said. "Maybe longer." "Gotta order that belt," Grace's heart sank. Her budget was tight, and an unexpected hotel stay wasn't in the plan. Jack must have seen her expression because he said quietly, "Martha rents rooms above the diner. Clean, affordable, and you can't beat the breakfast." At Martha's, Grace discovered that Jack was something of a local fixture. The woman behind the counter, somewhere in her 60s with kind eyes and steel-gray hair, lit up when she saw him. "Jack Holloway, don't you look like something the cat dragged in? When's the last time you had a proper meal?" She came around the counter and embraced him like a mother hen with a wayward chick. "I eat fine, Martha," Jack protested, but he was smiling. "Pfft, I bet you're living on coffee and whatever you can heat up in a microwave." She turned to Grace. "I'm Martha Reeves. I've known this stubborn man since he was knee-high. Don't believe half of what he tells you." Over dinner, Grace learned that Jack had grown up in Redemption, left for a while, then came back about 10 years ago. He was quiet about the details, and Grace didn't push. She'd learned that some stories came out in their own time. Instead, they talked about easier things. Books they'd read, places they'd seen, the way the land changed with the seasons. Jack had a dry wit that surprised her, and every now and then he'd say something that made her laugh outright, the kind of deep laugh she hadn't experienced in months. "Your ex-husband must have been a fool," Jack said at one point, then looked startled, as if the words had escaped without permission. Grace felt her cheeks warm. "What makes you think I have an ex-husband?" "You've got that look. Like someone who's been carrying a weight and just set it down. Getting used to how light feels." Grace stirred her coffee. 20 years. He decided he wanted someone younger, someone who didn't have opinions or expectations or a history. Someone who looked good at his company parties. She shrugged. "His loss, my freedom, or so my sister keeps telling me." "Your sister's right." Jack's voice was firm. "Any man who can't see the value of a woman with substance is a fool. You ever married?" Grace asked, then added quickly, "Sorry, that's none of my business." "It's all right." Jack looked out the window at the darkening street. "Once, long time ago. She was beautiful, ambitious. I thought I could give her everything she wanted. Turned out what she wanted was money and status, not a life on a ranch with a man who smelled like cattle. When she realized I actually preferred working with my hands to working in office, she left." He smiled, but it was sad around the edges. "That was 15 years ago. Haven't felt much inclined to try again." "That's lonely," Grace said softly. "It is," Jack admitted. "But it's safe. Can't get hurt if you don't let anyone close." They looked at each other across the worn Formica table, two wounded souls recognizing something familiar in each other's eyes. Over the next 3 days, while Pete worked on her truck, Grace found herself spending more time with Jack than she'd planned. He showed her around Redemption, introduced her to the locals, took her to see the land from the bluffs, where you could watch the sunset paint the whole world gold. They rode horses through the countryside, and Grace felt something in her soul settle. This was what she'd been missing in Houston: space, simplicity, connection to something real. "You're good with horses," Jack observed as they let their mounts drink from a creek. "Not everyone has that natural way. Daddy's teaching. He used to say horses could tell what was in your heart, so you better make sure it's something worth knowing." Wise man. Grace watched a hawk circle overhead. "Can I ask you something? Don't take this wrong, but you don't talk like most ranch hands I've known. You've got education in your voice. Jack was quiet for a long moment. I went to college. Business degree, actually. Worked in Dallas for a while, made good money, but I hated every minute of it. Felt like I was slowly suffocating in those boardrooms, making decisions about things that didn't matter. When my father died, I came back. Took over the ranch, got my hands dirty again. Best decision I ever made? But you said you manage some land? I do. Jack looked uncomfortable. I oversee the operations. Make sure things run smooth. Something in his evasiveness made Grace curious, but she didn't press. She was enjoying this too much to risk spoiling it with awkward questions. On the fourth day, Pete declared the truck ready. Grace stood in the garage, looking at her repaired vehicle, and felt an unexpected sadness. She wasn't ready to leave. Wasn't ready to say goodbye to this town, this slower pace, this unexpected connection. Wasn't ready to say goodbye to Jack. That evening, Jack took her to a community dance at the VFW hall. It was the kind of old-fashioned gathering Grace remembered from her childhood. A local band playing country standards. Couples of all ages two-stepping across a worn wooden floor. Children racing around the edges. And tables laden with homemade dishes. Jack danced with her. And Grace discovered he was surprisingly graceful. My mother insisted, he explained. Said a man who couldn't dance wasn't much of a gentleman. She raised you right. As they swayed to a slow ballad, Jack said quietly, You could stay, you know. Redemption's always got room for one more. And I heard the elementary school's looking for a teacher's aide. Grace's heart skipped. Jack, I know it's crazy. We barely know each other. But Grace, these past few days, I've felt more alive than I have in years. Like I've been walking around half asleep and suddenly woke up. He pulled back to look at her. I'm not asking for promises. Just asking you to consider staying a while. See if this feeling is real. Grace wanted to say yes. Wanted it so badly it scared her. But caution, learned from years of disappointment, held her back. I need to think about it. My sister's expecting me and I... Of course. Jack's face closed off slightly. Protective. I understand. The next morning, Grace loaded her truck, feeling like she was tearing away from something precious. Jack came to see her off, standing in the early light with his hands in his pockets. Thank you, Grace said, for everything. For fixing my truck, for showing me redemption, for... She trailed off, not sure how to name what he'd given her. For reminding you what kindness looks like, Jack suggested gently. You did the same for me. Grace impulsively stood on her toes and kissed his cheek. If things were different, I know. As she drove away, watching redemption disappear in her rearview mirror, tears streamed down Grace's face. She told herself she was being smart, practical, protecting herself from another potential heartbreak, but it felt an awful lot like cowardice. 2 weeks later, Grace was at her sister's house in Amarillo, helping in the garden when Beth said casually, Did you hear about the big land deal that fell through? Some rancher wanted to sell his holdings to a development company, but the town council blocked it. Which rancher? Grace asked, not particularly interested. Let me see. Beth scrolled through her phone. Here it is. Jack Holloway. Says here he owns about 30,000 acres in and around Redemption. Biggest landowner in 3 counties. There's a picture. Oh my God, Grace, that's the guy you told me about. The drifter cowboy who fixed your truck. Grace's heart stopped. She grabbed the phone and stared at the image. There was Jack, in a suit that probably cost more than her truck, standing next to the governor at some formal event. The caption identified him as Jack Holloway, CEO of Holloway Ranch Holdings, philanthropist, and one of the wealthiest men in Texas. She sat down hard on the garden bench. Grace, you okay? You've gone white as a sheet. He lied to me, Grace whispered. He let me think he was just a ranch hand. Let me offer to buy him dinner like he was down on his luck. Let me tell him about losing my daddy's ranch, about struggling to make ends meet, and the whole time he was... She couldn't finish. Beth sat beside her, reading more. Says here his ex-wife tried to take him for millions in the divorce. He's been private ever since, rarely does interviews. Known for being generous to local charities, but keeps to himself. She looked at Grace. Maybe he had his reasons? There's no good reason to lie, Grace said. But even as she said it, she remembered the wariness in Jack's eyes, the walls he'd admitted building around his heart. She remembered her own words to him. Any man who can't see the value of a woman with substance is a fool. Had he been testing her, seeing if she'd treat him differently if she knew about the money? The more Grace thought about it, the angrier she got. Not just at Jack, but at herself for caring so much. She'd been ready to upend her whole life for a man who couldn't even be honest about who he was. She tried to put it behind her. Helped Beth with her kids, looked for work, went through the motions. But at night, she kept thinking about those days in redemption. The easy conversation, the laughter, the way Jack had looked at her like she mattered. Had any of it been real? A month passed. Then one afternoon there was a knock at Beth's door. Grace answered it and found herself face to face with Jack Holloway. He looked tired, his face drawn. He was dressed simply, jeans, a button-down shirt, that same gray hat, but now Grace couldn't unsee the wealth. It was in the way he carried himself, the confidence that came from never having to worry about a broken-down truck or where the next meal was coming from. "Can we talk?" Jack asked quietly. "I don't know what we have to talk about," Grace said, but she stepped outside, closing the door behind her. They walked to a nearby park and sat on a bench. For a long moment, Jack just stared at his hands. "I should have told you," he finally said. "I know that. But Grace, you have to understand, every woman I've met in the past 10 years, the minute they found out about the money, they changed. They started seeing dollar signs instead of me. I was so tired of it, so tired of being a bank account instead of a person." "So you lied," I omitted. "And yes, I know that's not much better." He turned to face her. "But Grace, those days with you were the first time in years I felt like myself. Not Jack Holloway the millionaire, just Jack. A man who likes fixing engines and riding horses and watching sunsets. A man who could talk to a smart, beautiful, genuine woman and have her see him instead of his net worth." "You could have told me after," Grace said. "After you knew I wasn't like that. You had chances, I know, and I was going to. That last night at the dance, I was working up to it. But then you said you needed to think about staying, and I panicked. I thought if I told you right then, you'd think I was trying to buy your affection. Or worse, that you'd say yes because of the money instead of because of me." Grace felt her anger cracking around the edges. "That's quite a trap you built for yourself." "Yeah." Jack smiled sadly. "I'm good at that. Building traps and then wondering why I feel caught." They sat in silence, watching children play on the swings. "For what it's worth," Jack said, "I wasn't testing you. I was just being a coward. Too scared to risk being honest because honesty had burned me before." He looked at her. "But you deserve better than that. You deserve someone brave enough to trust you with the truth. All of it. From the beginning." "I'm sorry I wasn't that person." Grace felt tears prick her eyes. "You hurt me." "I know. And I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know that everything I felt, everything we shared, that was all real. The money doesn't change who I am at my core. I'm still the man who loves fixing engines and working with horses. I'm still the man who fell for a woman with wrench grease on her hands and sunshine in her smile." "Why now?" Grace asked. "Why come here now?" "Because I'm trying to be braver. Because I've spent 10 years hiding behind my hurt, and I realized you were right. It's lonely. And safety isn't worth it if it means losing something real." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a set of keys. "This is for you." Grace looked at them, confused. "What are these?" "Keys to a ranch outside Redemption. 500 acres, small by my standards, but a good size. House needs some work, but it's structurally sound. There's a barn, stables, good water." He pressed them into her hand. "It's yours. Free and clear. Title's in your name already." Grace stared at the keys like they might bite her. "Jack, I can't accept this." "Yes, you can. And before you accuse me of trying to buy your affection, this is yours whether you ever speak to me again or not. You told me about your daddy's ranch, about what it meant to lose that land. I can't give you back what was taken, but I can give you a fresh start, a place to build something new." His voice roughened. "Call it an apology. Call it paying forward the kindness you showed a stranger on the roadside. Call it whatever you want, but take it." Grace's hands trembled. "This is too much." "It's not nearly enough." Jack stood. "I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that you changed something in me, Grace. You reminded me what it feels like to be seen, To be valued for who you are, not what you have. That's a gift beyond price. He turned to leave, and Grace felt panic flutter in her chest. Jack, wait! He stopped, his back to her. I was angry, Grace said slowly. And I had a right to be. But I've spent this past month thinking about what you said that last night. About me staying. About this feeling being real. She stood, walked around to face him. I've been scared too. Scared of getting hurt again. Scared of trusting my judgment after I got it so wrong with my ex. Maybe we both built our own traps. Jack's eyes held a fragile hope. What are you saying? I'm saying I don't want the ranch if it's goodbye. But if it's a new beginning, if it's you asking me to take a chance,